Many are asking the same question. How do I deal with life pressures? There is no clear direction for my life. No matter what you are facing, no matter how difficult life may get, there is triumph over tragedy, hope out of your hopeless situation. No circumstance, however big or dark it seems, can stand against the miracles of God. Tune in and be encouraged as you discover the keys that unlock the doors to a life of freedom and joy. This is Life Beyond the Moment with Doug Stringer.
Welcome to another Life Beyond the Moment with Doug Stringer. Good to be with you again today. I'm so excited about my guest today, Jerry Lackey. He and his wife Jana have been longtime friends and just celebrated over 25 years of ministry in Botswana, Africa, that is reaching not just that country, but nations all over the world. It's great to have you again today, Jerry.
Hey, good to be with you, Dr. Dougie. We're just fortunate to be in Houston today and be able to have some time with you.
Absolutely. You know, we go back a long ways, so we probably know each other almost 3 decades.
I'm thinking like 30 years now.
Wow. Now, you were telling some folks before we got on the program today about how we actually first met. So, in your recollection, how did we first meet?
You know, I came to Houston. I was studying, I had gone to Bible school, rented an apartment out around Sugar Land, and I remember seeing this young guy, this young Japanese-looking guy who was baptizing people in the jacuzzi. And I thought, who in the world is this guy? Little to find out, it's none other than Doug Stringer, who started Turning Point Ministries International so many years ago.
I think it wasn't that I was just, the hot tub was the thing, but you know, during cold seasons, I'm not stupid. I'm going to baptize in a hot tub rather than a cold pool, right?
Makes good sense, yeah.
Now, back in those days, we had incredible things that God was doing in our city, really reaching a lot of young people, and we were all a part of that kind of a divine move of God, providential move of God in our city. Yeah. And it's pockets all over the city. People are coming to Christ and really not just coming to Christ to become Christians, but really wanting to do something for Christ and carrying a passion.
Yeah, and I thank God for our youthful zeal, but I also thank God for the wisdom and the perseverance of 30 years of ministry now.
Absolutely. You know, I just finished an article for a magazine on leadership and leaving a lasting legacy, and I actually talk about that, the importance. You know, in an element in my own life, there was an arrogance of my youth. And it was honest,
Sure.
Zeal and passion, but there's something about getting the wisdom of experience and years. And you put that together, I think we have a multi-generational potential for an outpouring of God's presence again if we engage and release and bless this emerging generation with their zeal and passion, but they also honor and respect the foundations that have been laid for them and glean the wisdom of those who have gone before them.
Absolutely, I agree.
Now, when you first got involved in ministry, and you first met your wife, I remember you guys were courting each other back then.
Sure.
And then you guys, but individually, God had already placed something in your heart and a passion for Africa. Tell that story.
It was pretty incredible, Doug. I'd come out of the business world and had felt impressed to go and study the Bible. Found myself at Lakewood Bible Institute back in 1983 and 84.
John and Dodie Osteen.
John and Dodie Osteen, still a wonderful mentor to me. Both John and Dodie and Lakewood Church launched us, 30 years ago into ministry. And I was in a classroom with about 90 other students the first year that they had their Bible school. Young man, wasn't sure what God had for me, but I knew that I should be there at that time. And one morning we were watching a Dr. T.L. and Daisy Osborne film called Black Gold. And I'd never been out of America, maybe had been to Mexico, Central America, but hadn't traveled far from our boundaries. And watched this beautiful documentary that Dr. T.L. Osborne had done. It was filmed in Nigeria. At that point, I wouldn't have known Nigeria from Botswana, but God used that to really break my heart for the people of Africa. During that little bit of time I watched the film, I remember feeling these overwhelming emotions. My heart was breaking for the people that I saw on the screen. And I just said, God, why am I feeling these emotions? I don't know these people, what's this all about? So I left the classroom because I was coming undone. And in our generation, as men, we didn't cry, we didn't show emotions. And so I went to a little prayer room, and then God in a still small voice said, son, you're feeling my very heart for the nations of the world, the people of the world who don't know about my love. Then Isaiah 6:8 became very clear to me, and saw my hand come up, here I am, Lord, send me. little did I know what the next 30 years would bring in my life. But it's been an incredible adventure with God. If I had 1,000 years to live, I'd do it all over again.
And at the same time, before God had brought you and Jana together, before you got married, she had been part of Christ for the Nations and Living Praise, I believe.
Yeah.
And God had already spoke to her about Africa.
Incredible. She was a couple years ahead of me because she had already gone through Bible school. One morning during chapel, a guest speaker from Swaziland came through. She had a very similar experience, and God kind of closed the door for her to wait for Mr. Wonderful to come into her life, and eventually we met, and an unbeatable team. Jan and I together have been an unbeatable team in vision and passion and just endurance. Now, I'm going to tell you, I think you know this because you and your wife travel all over the world, but you know, when God calls you to the nations, you need a mate, a partner who's equally called. And I remember we took a short-term mission trip with Lakewood to Honduras before we were married, with part of a church group, because we're both checking each other out. We want to find out, are you really called? Because I'm in this thing for the long run, you better be too. Right. And we both passed the test.
Wow. Well, I remember you guys would, from time to time, visit a Bible study I was doing with a bunch of people getting saved in those townhomes and apartments in Stafford, Texas. And I remember when you first got married and you both told me the story, and I think we were having dinner. In fact, you guys made dinner, I think, and I came over.
Possibly.
And had the pleasure of hearing you say, well, we feel called to go to Botswana, Africa. I said, have you been there? No. But we're called to go. I said, don't you think you ought to just go on a short-term trip? No, we know we're called because you knew what God had spoken to you, and you had mentioned the word passion. Your passion for a people, the brokenness of your heart for a people of Africa, the beautiful people of Africa. And I've heard you many times with tears in your eyes say, the beautiful people of Botswana. I mean, you love the people of Botswana, and it's carried on all over Africa and other parts of the world that you've carried that passion for people. And that's something God's instilled in you. And that's why the longevity of your ministry has lasted all these years. It's not like you had a good idea and now it's gone. You've lived it, and you had to live through much difficulty to get to the place where you are today. I remember the times when you first got there and you told me you were going. I said, you're like Ken and Barbie. Are you sure you're called to go to mission field full time? But you knew what God had spoken, and you proved that term, that passion of your heart was real. And I had the pleasure of being on your founding board of directors, and still serve
are
on your
today
board
after all these years.
After all these years, so you still let me hang out with you.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time you went there, you had to kick baboons out of your house.
Oh, yes.
Your first child was born without running water.
Oh, yes.
And you had all these stories, and along the way, I've heard every story of the miraculous provision of God, but the moments of disappointment that could have knocked the passion out, and you could have come home. And a string of things, but all along the way, God gave you a word in season. God reminded you of your passion. And I just want, you have a video that I want you to explain, because I want people to see where it is today. But then we're going to come back and talk about the journey to get there and keeping your passion in the unfolding of a vision.
Awesome. This little video clip is we just produced it. We just celebrated 25 years of ministry and the grand opening of a community life center that we had just built with some great partners. And so we did this little 5-minute clip, but it gives a little background. You know, part of the journey has been that passion that I received that day, it was the heart of God for people. And, you know, we've made a lot of mistakes on the way, you know, in 25 years, but 2 things we did right. When God asked us and gave us an invitation to join Him in what He was doing in the nations of the world, we said yes. And the second thing is we persevered and we've stayed with it. So we had that calling that beyond the floods, the fires, and everything that has
literal floods and fires,
literally floods
and droughts.
Fires and droughts, and the hippos in the backyard, and the baboons. You know, that voice of God has always rang true in our ears. And you know, so we stayed the course. And thank God, because when you stay the course, I mean, greater things are always just around the corner. I was telling the church the other day, I said, you know, we could have quit 18 years ago. We could have quit 20 years ago, so we had some success. But thank God we didn't quit 20 years ago, or we wouldn't be in this wonderful facility today with all of you. So it's just the showing up every day.
And Jerry, you had mentioned Isaiah 6, and then it really was about getting in the presence of God, and God doing a divine providential ministry to your spirit and to Jana's heart and spirit. and you made yourself available and willing. God was asking, are you willing?
Sure.
Who can I send? And you said, here I am, Lord, I'm willing. And God took and unfolded the rest.
Yeah. Kind of for those watching out there, you know, maybe God's stirring your heart for missions. You know, I was like, here I am, Lord, but I'm unqualified. I might be undereducated. I don't have the experience. But He didn't ask me all those questions. He just said, are you willing? Will you say yes, and will you go? And when I said, here I am, Lord, send me, I'm telling you, heaven gave me everything I needed to do the mission He called me to.
Absolutely.
Awesome, eh?
Well, I want people to see this video about the 25-year anniversary. My wife and daughter actually had the pleasure of being there to celebrate with you, and because I was already scheduled somewhere else, but our hearts were with you, and just an incredible ministry. I'm so honored and privileged and proud of being a part of Jerry and Jana Lackey Ministries and Love Botswana outreaches, and just to see what you've done. But let's watch this video. We'll come back and we'll talk about the journey of the unfolding of the vision and what it takes to persevere to see it come to pass.
Awesome.
"25 years ago, a couple said yes to being vessels for God's great love plan for the Northwest District of Botswana. They left their homeland with nothing but God's vision planted in their hearts and a willingness to being the hands and feet for God's plan to unfold.
I got to the place in my life I thought there must be more than just living for myself. And this set me on a great quest to see if I could make my life count for something more. And I met Jana, and we both had an incredible encounter with the Lord, and that brought us to Africa.
When we came to Botswana, we were out in tents camping and just sharing the gospel with little groups of people in very remote areas.
We didn't have much to work with, but we just said, let's do what we can with what we have.
And then we thought, what can we do to leave a lasting legacy?
I remember going out in the full moon of the Kalahari and just literally reaching down into the soil of the ground and speaking to that soil and saying, in the name of Jesus, I command these buildings to come forth. And so everything that you see really came by faith.
We had some wonderful people that partnered with us, and we started a Christian school. The name was Ngamiland Christian Academy, and through the school we began to see something that would remain in the country and that would go on and live past us. 10 years later, we added high school and named the school Okavango International School, and so the school's been going for over 20 years, and we've seen hundreds of young people come through the school and emerge as leaders within this country. From the time we drafted our papers for Love Botswana and got registered in the country, one of our visions on that original document was media, to have an opportunity to broadcast the gospel in different languages. So Studio 7 was birthed as a result of that. I heard a voice inside of me from the heart of God that said, Jana, I count the stars. I call each one by name. And I want you to help rescue babies. So Lorato House was birthed through that experience that I had with God. And today we have 14 babies that we take care of 24/7, a dedicated, wonderful staff. And we can take up to 74 as God gives us the capacity to be able to take that many. In 1991, we partnered with Teen Mania, a wonderful organization that sends teenagers all around the world. Over 15 years, there were over 3,000 young people that came through Love Botswana and served in Maun and in the remote areas of the north of Botswana. And today, there are churches planted from those trips. The next thing we saw happen was we started Love Botswana Bible Institute. We began to see leaders beginning to rise up from those remote areas where we would do evangelism, and there would be little house groups started and little churches started. So through that time, we began to see leaders come up, and they needed training. We wanted them to be trained right in Maun, where they could go right back and make a difference in their communities. 18 years now that Fire by Night, every Friday night, young people gather. What started as a small group of young people now has grown to over anywhere from 150 up to 300, depending on the time of year. Students that come and they have fun, wholesome recreation. They have a blast. Their lives are impacted for eternity. They're making a difference with their lives in their schools. They're not all just from our school, they're from all the schools in the community. It's not about buildings. Buildings make it happen for people. We've been meeting under trees, we've been meeting in tents for years, doing these programs, but now we have a home. We have a home for all of the programs that have risen up through the years through Love Botswana. The Life Center is a multi-purpose facility. It caters for everyone in the community.
In 25 years, you can imagine, we've had a lot of hardships. It hasn't always been easy, but I'd have to say it's always been worth it.
Perseverance has paid off. It's paid off, and we're still persevering, and we're excited to see this thing through till Jesus comes.
Everything that you see about Love Botswana today has a miracle story behind it, and really, there's no fingerprints of man on it.
It's the fingerprints of God.
You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of...
Wow, the fingerprints of God, that is so true. And I still remember when it was just in your heart, Jerry, and because I had visited, after you'd already been there a few years, I came down back in 1992, 93, somewhere in there, and you didn't have anything like this. You had some bungalows and some things, but it was drought time. And
a lot
I remember,
of canvas tents.
Yeah, a lot of tents, and I was sucking lots of dust. I remember that blowing my nose. And
that's why you never came back
for a
until
long
just
time.
recently.
Yeah. And so, but I remember we were at a board meeting when you had come back to Houston, and you had drafted something on a napkin or on a piece of paper of the vision that you had of seeing this thing come to pass. Yeah. Didn't have the resources, didn't have the money, didn't have the manpower, but you had a passion in your heart for a people and a vision that had been unfolding and had gone through lots of difficulties to get there. On my wall in my office is still the rendition that you put together of a dream, just that kind of just a theme. Yeah. And when I went there a few years ago with you, the day after you came out of chemotherapy and you were determined to get back to your annual meetings there, and the doctor said, you can't, you just finished chemotherapy, and you said, I'm not missing our camp meeting.
Right.
And so they worked it out. I remember being on a plane with you that day.
You took me, helped me get there.
Right. Well, I remember you kind of put a little pressure. You called me a few months before that, says, Doug, I was on a 40-day fast, you said.
Right.
And all you knew at the end of the fast was call Doug, he needs to come do camp meeting.
Right.
You called me from Botswana, and you said, Doug, we have to do camp meeting, and you need to come. And I've already told people, no pressure, but I've already told people.
Kind of strong-armed you on that one.
No pressure. I've already advertised. We got things getting ready to get printed up, but no pressure. And I said, well, I'll have to pray about it. And then it was after that you found out that you had stage 4 cancer. Right. And then you had to come to Houston to the Med Center. And we were having dinner one night, and you looked at me and said, you know, Doug, you haven't given me a decision yet. And no pressure. The media's already out. People are talking about you coming. And don't let a little cancer in my body pressure you, because I'm going to camp meeting. I said, okay, I'm going. I remember that. But it was a journey to get to that point, yeah. and to see what was in your heart is literally come to pass. Yeah. Tell us a few of the dynamic stories in the beginning that brought you to that point. And of course, I've set it up now about the cancer that they said was stage 4, but God did a miracle.
He did. You know, at one point, you know, our dreams were coming true. We were seeing so much, you know, accomplished through our perseverance and just staying with the call. And then, you know, got this lump that came up on my neck, got a diagnosis on it, and, you know, in the best times, things were going so well. got the bad report, hey, it's cancer, it's at this point stage 4 in your body, and those words that no one wants to hear, get your affairs in order. And it's wonderful to have people around you who can speak hope into a situation like that. And we had a moment of just a little bit of a pity party for maybe 6 hours, and then the elders and the men in the church, they anointed me, prayed for me. Our faith, began to rise up in us, and within 24 hours we were okay. We knew that God would be with us, and made that journey. And thank God today, as I sit here today, I'm 6 years free of cancer, healed, and carrying on with the plans and purposes of God in our lives. And so, with vision there is a journey in it, and the vision will be tested along the way. There are obstacles and difficult times. I've learned that, you were talking about the sketches and that sort of thing. For everything that God's put in my heart, I've learned to develop the eye of faith. And I've learned that what you see and what you believe about yourself is what you move towards. And what you see and what you believe about your life will determine the boundaries of your life. And so in knowing that, we've always tried to keep the vision before us. And for me, I mean, they can tell you, all my staff back home, I've got stacks full of notebooks, the little loose leaf notebooks where when God gives me impressions and dreams, I draw them, I sketch them. And what I can see and what I can believe becomes reality in the tangible world. And I've done that with every building that's been built. When we used to drive onto the campus, it was just a big piece of land full of bush. But I had to train my eye to say, there I see the Bible school. Here I hear the sound of children playing in the international school. Over here I hear the pages of parchment of a Bible being turned where the Bible school our students are at. And through that, other people would drive in, they say, all I see is a big empty field with bush in it.
Yeah.
But I train my eyes to see beyond the natural into the faithfulness and the supernatural of God through faith.
Well, when I look at, and I was talking to you earlier, that in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, it says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. And you've gone through a lot of challenges, but you had to endure because of what the work of the cross had already provided for you and the calling and commissioning of God in your lives. And I remember one time getting a phone call from you that everything had been stolen, and there was an explosion on your facilities, and everything was destroyed. Your money, your guitar, I remember, and different things were taken, and it was like you'd have to start from scratch. How did you feel at that moment? Those kinds of moments, and of course the cancer and so many things along the way that could have knocked the wind out of you.
We're not superheroes, we're just normal people. I think the moment that we lost the mission compound, the house burned down, all there was left was just ashes. And at that point we had gone in, we had hit the 10-year mark. We went to Botswana with a little over $300 and just a promise from God, if we would go, He'd be faithful. And honestly, how I felt like probably anybody else would. I thought, what? We've given it 10 years. Let's go back to Houston. Let's wave our missionary flags. We've done some good, and let's just call it a day. But within that 12 to 15 hour period, thank God for a partner that was called. Something began to stir inside of Jana, and she began to say, what? We'll not accept defeat. We'll not stop. We'll do more. We'll go farther, go deeper than we ever before. And her zeal and her faith at that time caused me to be lifted. And we've been that way in our partnership. If she's having a bad month, I can spur her on. And so it was. So we decided, we're going to stay with it. Thank God we stayed with it, because for everything we lost within a period of 12 months, for the one house that we lost, we were given, and the property we lost, the government then released a parcel of land, about 16 hectares of land, over 20-some acres of land. And today, where we lost one house, we now have about 11 houses on that campus for campus housing and many buildings. Wow. And so, what God, what the devil meant for bad, God really turned around and multiplied. I think it was because we decided to stay with it. And 99% of success, I've found, is just showing up every day.
Absolutely.
Stay with it. Success is really just around the corner. You can't see it. It may be clouded. There may be dark shadows hanging on, but just persevere. Yes. Stay with it, the light will come through.
And as you focus on the vision that God's given you, and quit being distracted by all the things of what if I had, I need this, I need that, but focusing on being available every day and doing what God called a passion for a people, the unfolding of a vision has now left a lasting legacy. And God began to speak to people you didn't even know. And today, people have seen the TV show like The Amazing Race. Well, you own the property they actually came to use on your property to do some of their filming, because someone that you didn't know at the time ended up buying that facility and using it and gave it to you to help to run the ministry of Love Botswana.
You know, just miracle after miracle of God's provision. And so you don't try to figure it all out. You know, you just get in there, stay with it. That's part of it, just staying with it, staying faithful, and then acting. You know, when God opens doors for you, just walk through them. And so we've had, you know, many, many wonderful testimonies of God's faithfulness. And I can declare today, God is a faithful God. Somebody said, can God set a table in the wilderness? Well, we've been in Botswana, in that dry desert place, for over 25 years. Yes, He can.
And this is just the beginning. It's all been preparation for what God's about to do to reach nations.
Yeah, I believe our greatest days are ahead.
Absolutely.
I'm still young. I'm still full of energy.
Yeah. And you're cancer-free.
I'm cancer-free today.
And so of all these challenges along the way, God gave you an ability to dig deep, keep your vision on Him, and live life beyond the moment.
And live beyond ourself. You know, the awesome thing about saying yes to God's great invitation to go on these great journeys with Him. I don't know, I may be wrong, but I think that world missions is God's answer to the Indiana Jones that lives in a lot of us men, that quest for adventure and living on the edge. That's just the way I live, and God says yes to that in world missions, but it becomes more than just a youthful adventure. Yes. It becomes, you know, an adventure with a purpose and a plan. And I mean, God will just rock you with what He will do with your life. Just a simple farm boy raised in Kentucky, and I never believed or never dreamed that I would experience and be able to do the things that I've been able to do. But that's just the part and package of doing that.
I can't wait to when you get a book out of all the adventuresome stories, because you have so many great stories of God's supernatural providence and provision in your life. In fact, we're blessed to be able to have given you guys an office with us in your U.S. office while you guys are down doing your stuff on ground in Botswana and all over the world, and we just count that an honor.
We're so appreciative to Turning Point and Somebody Cares Houston for making that available to us. It's been such a great help to have the synergy of being even in the same office building as you guys, your great neighbors to have across the street.
Amen. Well, you know, God has placed a passion in you. If you have a passion for God, He will break your heart with a compassion for people. And out of that place, He will unfold a vision. You may not have a clear vision of what you ultimately should do, but if you'll go after God and He will give you a heart for people, He will unfold a vision for you to leave a lasting legacy to the glory of God as well.
We pray that you are encouraged and blessed by today's program. This program is supported by viewers like you. If you would like more information or to support the ongoing ministry of Doug Stringer and Somebody Cares, please go to www.somebodycares.org.